Hi, welcome to Life on the Rock, and tonight we're joined by Regina Doman. She's a Catholic teen fiction writer. And welcome, Regina. We'll just get right into it. Can you describe some of your books to us? They're based on fairy tales, right?
Yeah, I write novels for teens. They're like Catholic romance adventures. But they're based on fairy tales. What I do is, other writers, secular writers do this as well, but I had the idea from G.K. Chesterton of taking a fairy tale, putting it in a modern setting, and just retelling the story with Catholic characters and themes. And that's pretty much what I do. I did the first one, Shadow of the Bear, back about 10 years ago, and I've had some sequels, Black as Night, Waking Rose, and this past summer we just did The Midnight Dancers. And I'm really pleased that people really seem to like them. We have a lot of kids who really enjoy them.
And when you say we, you're referring to your husband? And,
yeah, we started self-publishing not this past year, but the year before with Waking Rose. And yeah, my husband, who's not on the show right now, he's holding down my 3 kids in the background, our little babies. And he's my editor. He's my secret weapon. Those books would not be half as good if they weren't for him.
Now, he's a black belt, right? So when you say secret weapon, you're talking about
he's
some serious.
He's the serious black belt, cum ninja of editors. I'll tell you that much. So,
Now you refer to yourself as the series queen for the John Paul II High books. Right?
Yes, that's been a pretty exciting project, the John Paul II High series. Well, basically, I have been publishing these books based on fairy tales, and not everybody likes fairy tales. That's what I came to realize. I write them because I like fairy tales, but not every teen who was reading it really enjoyed fairy tales. So I said, you know what? There's a market out there. There's a need out there for just fiction that's Catholic, that doesn't have anything to do with fairy tales necessarily. So I said, and I know that there are some good Catholic writers. I was been in touch with, students who are coming out of Christendom and Steubenville, and I knew I was running into some really good writers. I said, you know what? Some of these kids could write a book if they had someone who would help get it published. So I basically put together a team of about 10 young Catholic writers from Christendom and from Franciscan University of Steubenville, and we put together this series called John Paul II High. And I do not write the books. I basically created them, I produce them, I edit them, but they're the ones who do the writing. And
now they build on one another, or they all? Yeah. Oh, they do. Okay.
Yeah, the first book deals with the start of this new school, John Paul II High. Our late Holy Father was still alive when we started working on this project. It's been 3 years in the making. So it's just a tiny little school, and there's about 6 kids in the entire school, and the parents are running the school. And some of the kids are there because they really love Catholicism, they really want to be there, but other kids are there because their parents are really Catholic and their parents make them go there. Right. So, isn't that how it is in the church, where there's some, when I was a teenager, I really loved being Catholic, but I had friends, of course, who were just like, my parents make me do this, I'm really not too into it. And so that's kind of the situation that's at the school, is the same way.
And I like that idea of marshaling these forces, giving a vehicle to have their work published, and you're taking all their energy and everything to create these stories. And you were saying the Nancy Drew series, right?
Yeah, well, I said this is not a new idea. I mean, the Nancy Drew series was created the same way. A publisher had a good idea. Hey, let's do a mystery series for girls. They hired, a bunch of different writers to be Carolyn Keene. Carolyn Keene never existed. Frank Dixon never existed, who wrote The Hardy Boys. So it's not a new idea in publishing.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
You mean the author of The Hardy Boys never really existed?
As far as I understand.
I'm leaving. I cannot. No, I'm heartbroken. I loved those books. I've had enough.
See, that just goes to show.
Too much reality.
Some people say
I'm heartbroken now.
Well, some people say you can't have a good series if there's a bunch of different authors working out, but the Hardy Boys proves it wrong. There's several different authors who's written as Frank Dixon, but the Hardy Boys were great. So when I say to people, they say, well, a book written by committee, that can't be good. And I was like, well, we don't write it by committee. We come up with the plots together, but then we assign a different writer to be Christian Frank, the author. So they take turns, and I'm convinced that we have a quality product. I mean, the kids have put a lot of hard work into these books. I say kids, I'm showing my age. They're actually all in their 20s, 30s, by now.
So
but
they're just a couple years younger than you.
A couple years younger than me, that's all.
But you don't plan to write one of those?
No, that's my vow, that I'm not going to write a book. This is to get other writers published in Catholic fiction. I mean, I don't want to be the only game in town with my ones.
But that's a great idea, because as I travel around doing, the Passion, the one-man drama that I do, I've had a lot of kids come up who are into acting, and they need more outlets, more vehicles to express their talent. There's that idea, I'm going to go to Hollywood and make it big there, and then I'm going to convert Hollywood.
Yeah.
Good luck. But the idea of giving them some outlets that have a moral, ethical base and foundation is excellent and very needed. And that's one of the ways we're going to win our culture back, or help provide, a good footing in culture.
Yeah, and with books, as with movies and television, I mean, if you make a product that's good enough, the secular world is going to listen, because everyone loves a good story.
Sure.
So it's kind of like, stealth evangelism. I mean, I don't say that we evangelize, really. I say if we evangelize anything, we evangelize people's imaginations. You're in the, you're out there evangelizing people's minds, their hearts. I said, but, we as writers, we're out there to get the imagination, where people aren't expecting that.
And we want to talk about that, but before we go there, can we, on the fairy tale retold, so you're using like the plot of a fairy tale. It's set in a completely modern setting, but it's kind of like follows the plot of a classic fairy tale, right? And because you grew up with fairy tales, you loved them?
Oh, I love fairy tales. Yeah, and I don't do fantasy. I mean, people keep on saying, oh, well, this is supposed to be a fantasy book if it's a fairy tale. And I say, no, it's actually just contemporary fiction. That's my genre, is contemporary teen fiction. But in Blackest Night, my second book there, that's based on the story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And what I do in that one is it's the story of 7 friars who work with the homeless in New York City. And then one day they find this girl on their doorstep who had, white skin and black hair, and there's this rich lady in Manhattan who's trying to kill her, and it sort of reminds us of the story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs,
I got to say, I started reading Waking Rose, and I'm not familiar with fairy. I just vaguely remember Disney or something, so it's kind of wasted on me. So it's all totally unexpected and new. It's not predictable, but. Let's talk about the evangelization of the imagination. I love that. You give talks on that, and it's kind of like at the heart of what you hope to do with fiction. Can you speak about that term, evangelization of the imagination?
Well, I mean, people say, well, do you work apologetics in, are you like trying to catechize them? I said, well, no, that's not it. I mean, fiction is very mysterious, It basically has its power by presenting us with memorable images that lodge in the imagination. And it helps us to visualize things that are difficult to visualize.
Right.
Well, I mean, a great example of this is, is actually, you're all probably familiar with it. Well, I mean, suppose you had to, try and get across the idea to people that there's a God. Our God is an awesome God. He is terrifying. If he walked into the room, you would be terrified. You'd be shaking. He's just that powerful. But at the same time, he's a God that is fascinatingly attractive. Like, you'd see him and you'd want to hug him at the same time. Like, you just want to go up and put your arms around him. You know what I mean? On the one hand, he's terrifying. On the other hand, he's attractive. Well, how
like a lion. I love that image.
Exactly.
Of a lion.
And so how would you get that idea across? And how would you get this idea across to 8-year-olds? Aslan.
Yeah.
So that's what C.S. Lewis does with Aslan.
My wife has described me that very way.
Yeah.
Terrifying,
there
and she
you go.
wants to hug me.
Well, but in the picture that C.S. Lewis gave us with Aslan, now we don't have to try and make that hurdle as evangelists. You don't have to do that. All you have to do is say, kids, Jesus is like Aslan. I mean, because C.S. Lewis gave us that image, and that evangelized our imagination by making us able to visualize a God who is like that.
Well, and and that's something, we talked about this earlier, and I've said this to my own children and others that I've spoken to, that the artist, the writer, the actor, the singer can paint pictures for the supernatural, things that we can't necessarily see with our eyes. And you had talked about actually in your books and in your writings wanting to give images to things that are good and elevate them to something that is spectacular, because there's so much that makes evil look, attractive.
Attractive, exactly.
And good oftentimes looks a little wimpy.